Last episode, I tested 4 conventional grind spots and ranked them mostly on one thing, what I actually got out of them. But silver per hour has a problem. It tells me how much money I made. It doesn't necessarily tell me whether those 3 hours actually move the character forward. So this time, we're testing progression against profit. And one of these spots made that comparison a lot harder than I expected. Before anybody takes the final numbers too seriously, remember that these are my results, not a definitive grind guide. This is my setup, my class, my rotation, and my very own non-min-maxed way of grinding. I am a lazy grinder. I grew up button mashing, and that will absolutely show here. Half the time, I've also got a stream or video playing on the other monitor. Class, gear buffs, market prices, rotation, efficiency, and good old-fashioned RNG can all change what you get. I'm grinding each spot for 3 hours because I want something more useful than a single lucky hour. But 3 hours is still only a sample. So treat these numbers as an observed result, not a promise of what you'll make. Episode 1 was pretty straightforward. 4 conventional season spots went in. We looked at the money, how comfortable they were, how repeatable the results felt, and then they went onto the tier list. This time I'm adding another question. What did those 3 hours actually progress? Because a lower silver number might still be the better grind if you're getting something useful alongside it. Hey, just a quick reminder before we get into the grinds. The agent is still running full PEN Tuvala, armors, and weapons. I'm using the same basic buff setup as in episode 1 with a level 1 loot scroll and no Agris. So outside of anything I specifically call out, testing conditions are staying the same. This time we're going to Sherekhan during the day, Tooth Fairy Forest, Mirumok Ruins, and finally Kratuga. To give direct potion progression, one trades some money for flexible progression and experience, and one was supposed to be the profit option. Supposed to be. We're starting at Sherekhan. For someone still working toward the infinite potion, this place has a very obvious progression goal, Dragon's Fangs. That's less useful to me personally because I finished the potion when it originally released. But that's exactly why I'm going to separate progression a newer account could use from progression that actually matters to mine. The actual grind was comfortable enough. Nothing here really pushed the agent, and my experience gains were pretty consistent across all 3 hours. I started level 62 at 0.141% and finished at 2.016%. That's 1.875 percentage points over the 3 hours. I also picked up 9 Dragon's Fangs. That's 3 petty pieces per hour. For somebody still building the potion, that's a real progression. For my account, they're basically a reminder that I already suffered through this once. And then there's the money. Sherekhan came out to 1.8 billion silver across the 3 hours. That's 605 million silver per hour, which sounds excellent until we look at what actually made that number. I got one combined magic crystal Macalod in hour 1 and another in hour 3. Garmoth value each of those at 278 million silver. So 556 million silver, almost a third of the entire 3 hour result came from those 2 drops. Remove those 2 crystals completely, and Sherekhan falls roughly 420 million an hour. I'm not saying the Macalods don't count. They dropped, so they count. But if we're talking repeatability, then that distinction matters. So Sherekhan gives us our first trade-off. 9 pieces of targeted potion progression, decent character experience, and the best money we've seen so far. But that money is noticeably dependent on valuable drops. Strong results, just not as stable as 605 million an hour makes it look. Next is Toothberry Forest. This is another infinite HP potion location, so we're testing almost the same progression idea under a different angle. Across 3 hours, I got 11 tranquil tinulums. That's about 3.7 pity pieces per hour. Slightly better than Sherekhan's 3. Once again, that's useful progression if you're still working on the potion. I'm not. So for my account, the more interesting progression here was experience. I started level 61 at about 51.846% and finished the third hour at 65.444%. That's 13.598 percentage points across the 3 hours. The first hour was noticeably stronger than hours 2 and 3, but I don't think that's something I can fairly blame on the grind itself. I was a little too distracted by what was happening on the stream I had playing, and I stopped more than once to answer questions from newer guild members. So rather than pretending the experience suddenly fell off, I'd put at least some of that difference on me simply not grinding as consistently. Either way, the 3 hour total is the number I'm comfortably using. Financially, Tooth Fairy Forest finished at 1.4 billion silver total. That's about 480 million silver per hour. No Agris, same basic test setup, and no enormous individual drop carrying the result. Compared with Sherekhan, Tooth Fairy gave me more direct potion progression, but substantially less money. And because my potion is already finished, those pity pieces don't really move my account forward. So this is where progression needs an asterisk. Progression is only valuable if it's progression you actually need. Mirumok changes the rules a little. Instead of giving me progression tied to one specific potion component, I'm getting Atanis elements and potentially much better character experience. The question is how much money I have to give up for it. I started Mirumok at level 61, 65.457%. After hour 1, I was at 77.676. After hour 2, 89.086. And before hour 3 was finished, the agent hit level 62. 3 hours took me from 65% through the entire remainder of level 61 and into level 62. Mirumok also gave me 11 Atanis elements, same number of progression items that Tooth Fairy produced. The difference is that these aren't tied to one potion piece. They're flexible. The cost? Mirumok made 1.3 billion silver total. That's 457.8 million per hour. The lowest raw silver result in this episode so far. But that's only about 22.5 million silver per hour below Tooth Fairy Forest. And that's where this episode starts getting interesting. For roughly 22 million silver less per hour, Mirumok gave me dramatically more character progression and 11 flexible progression items. That's the kind of results silver per hour doesn't show. If I'm developing a seasoned character rather than simply trying to squeeze every possible silver out of the hour, that trade starts looking very reasonable. And finally, Kratuga. Going into this, Kratuga was supposed to represent the profit side of the argument. Mirumok gives progression, Kratuga gives money. Nice, clean comparison. Kratuga apparently didn't read the script. One quick testing note. During this grind, my guild activated an additional item drop rate buff, which moved my displayed rate from 230 to 235%. That wasn't something I deliberately changed for Kratuga, and the affected hour didn't produce any more notable drops than the previous two, but I am mentioning it for transparency. Across the 3 hours, I got 4 LCARs, one in hour 1, two in hour 2, and one in hour 3. The base Elcar itself isn't really where the value is. If I sold one directly to a vendor, it's only worth 100,000 silver. Its real value is that it's the core ingredient used to craft a crystal of Elcar. To craft one crystal of Elcar, I needed one Elcar, one black magic crystal precision, two forest furies, and 10 magical shards. And this is where the problem shows up. At the time I'm writing this script, the numbers on screen represent the current central market. Black Magic Crystal Precision has more than 3,000 pre-orders, and Forest Furies has more than 32,000 pre-orders. Magical shards are much easier to source. At the time of writing this script, the finished crystal of Elcar is valued at around 333 million on Garmoth, with the central market price sitting at 346 million, and only 4 currently listed. Obviously, those numbers can change by time you're watching this. So the 4 Elcars absolutely have potential value, but I'm not going to pretend 4 Elcar drops automatically means 4 finished crystals. I still have to actually source the bottleneck materials. That's why I'm treating the Elcars as potential crafting value, not guaranteed liquid silver. And then Kratuga did something I wasn't expecting. I started at level 62, 2.019%. 3 hours later, I was at 5.957%. That's 3.938 percentage points of level 62. That's more than double the displayed level 62 progress I got at Sherekhan. And financially, Kratuga made 2.3 billion silver in 3 hours. 791.8 million silver per hour. No Agris, almost 187 million per hour ahead of Sherekhan. And unlike Sherekhan, I don't have 2 individual drops accounting for nearly a third of that result. Kratuga was supposed to be the profit option. Instead, it gave me the best profit result in the episode. Strong level 62 experience, 4 Elcars with additional crafting potential, and a grind that still had useful account value beyond the trash loot. So the question stopped being progression versus profit. Kratuga's answer was basically, why not both? Looking only at money, the ranking is simple. Mirumok finishes 4th at 458 million per hour. Tooth Fairy takes 3rd at 480 million. Sherekhan jumps to 605 million, and Kratuga finishes comfortably ahead at 792 million per hour. But Sherekhan needs context. 2 Macalogs contributed 556 million silver to that 3-hour result. Remove those, and Sherekhan falls to roughly 420 million an hour. Again, the drops count, but so does understanding where the number came from. Progression makes the ranking much less clean. Sherekhan gave 9 potion pity pieces, Tooth Fairy gave 11, Mirumok gave 11 Atanis elements, and pushed the agent all the way through the remainder of level 61. And Kratuga gave more than double Sherekhan's displayed level 62 progression while still producing the best financial result. And this is exactly why I don't want to force every progression item into a fake silver value. 11 potion pity pieces can be incredibly valuable if you need the potion. On my account, I don't. 11 Atanis elements are flexible, 4 Elcars have useful conversion potential. They're not the same kind of value. Starting with the easiest one, highest observed income goes to Kratuga at just under 792 million silver per hour. It wasn't particularly close either, finishing almost 187 million per hour ahead of Sherekhan. Best character progression goes to Mirumok. In 3 hours, it took the agent from 65% through the remainder of level 61 and all the way into level 62. For targeted potion progress, Tooth Fairy Forest takes it with 11 Tranquil Tinulums, edging out the 9 Dragon's Fangs I got at Sherekhan. The most drop-dependent result goes to Sherekhan. Two Macalods accounted for 556 million silver, almost a third of everything the spot made during the test. They absolutely count, but they also explain why that 605 million per hour headline needs some context. And finally, best overall balance goes back to Kratuga. It had the highest income, more than double Sherekhan's displayed level 62 experience gain, and 4 Elcars, giving it useful crafting potential beyond the normal loot. So those are the individual category winners. But now we get to the part that matters for the series. Where do these four actually fit on the tier list? And just like episode 1, this isn't simply a silver per hour ranking. I'm looking at money, progression, consistency, comfort, and what I actually got out of spending 3 hours there. I'm starting with Tooth Fairy Forest, and I'm putting it in the B tier alongside Polly's. 480 million silver per hour isn't bad, and 11 pity pieces gives the spot a very clear purpose if you're still working on the infinite HP potion. But that's also the problem. A lot of its progression value depends on whether you still need that potion. For me, I don't. So, well, it's a perfectly respectable grind. There wasn't enough here to push it into A. Mirumok is also going into B tier, but for almost the opposite reason. At 458 million silver per hour, it was actually the lowest money result of the episode. But it gave me 11 Atanis elements, and more importantly, took the agent from 65% at level 61 all the way to level 62. That's a lot of progression for giving up only about 22 million silver per hour compared with Tooth Fairy. I really like what Murmok offers, a developing season character. I just don't think the raw income is strong enough to move it into A. Sherekhan is where I'm moving back into A tier. Alongside Kadri, 605 million silver per hour is a strong observed result, and there were 9 Dragon's Fangs on top of that for anyone still working on their potion. The reason I'm stopping at A is those 2 Macalods. They contributed 556 million to the 3-hour result, and without them, the number drops to around 420 million an hour. I'm counting the drops because I got them. I'm just not going to ignore how much work they did. Strong enough for A, not consistent enough from this test for me to push it higher. And then there's Kratuga. This one is going to A+. 792 million silver per hour was comfortably the best financial result of the episode. It also gave me more than double Sherekhan's displayed level 62 experience progression, 4 Elcars with useful crafting potential, and it never really forced me to choose between making money and progressing the character. That's exactly what I wanted to find when I started this episode. I'm not pushing it into S tier yet. 3 hours is still 3 hours, and I want S tier to mean something by the time this board is finished. But out of everything we've tested so far, Kratuga is the first spot that clearly separates itself from the pack. Kratuga goes A+. And after 2 episodes, that's where the board stands. Kratuga takes the lead in A+, Kadri and Sherekhan sit in A. Polly's, Mirumok, and Tooth Fairy make up B. Bloodwolf stays in C, and Crescent remains down in D. And we're still waiting for something to earn C tier. Episode 1 asked which conventional season grind spots actually performed. Episode 2 gave me a different answer. The highest silver number doesn't automatically mean the best progression, but lower silver doesn't automatically mean better progression either. Murmok showed that giving up a relatively small amount of money can buy a lot of character progress. Sherekhan and Tooth Fairy showed that progression only matters if it's progression you actually need. And Kratuga showed that sometimes the best answer isn't choosing between progression and profit at all. Profit tells me what the hour earned. Progression tells me whether that hour moved anything forward. The better grind is the one that does enough of both for what you're actually trying to accomplish. Let me know which one surprised you most and whether you'd sacrifice some silver per hour if the grind was actually pushing your account somewhere useful.